Hello, everyone. So I wanted to go live to talk about a very important topic in astrology, which a lot of people don't pay attention to because it doesn't happen as often as other astrological things. So I wanted to go live today to talk about, excuse me, my eyes are like blurry, about Saturn return. So, Saturn return is a very unique but very important time. And I think it's important for everybody to pay attention to this time in their life because the Saturn return has a huge impact on how we view our lives, how we view ourselves, okay? So first of all, let me explain what the Saturn return is. So Saturn, the planet of limitations, planet of your talents and abilities, that planet returns to its place in the solar system every 29 and a half years, okay? So what happens is basically it returns to the place where it was the day you were born, 29 and a half years, every 29 and a half years. And what does that do? What that does is that Saturn, and a lot of people might have already gone through this, and a lot of people are coming up on their Saturn return right now, especially if you were born in the 90s. The Saturn return pressures us to become who we're meant to be. It pressures us and it makes us feel like, okay, it makes us reanalyze our lives. Like, okay, are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? Are we where we're supposed to be? And it almost feels like the time when you really realize that you're about to be different, that you're about to change from being an irresponsible 20-year-old to being a very responsible adult. And there almost seems to be like a separation between the 20s and the 30s at your 29th and a half birthday. And it happens again 29 and a half years later. So I'm not very good at math, but in your 50s, it happens again. I'm sorry, in your between your 59th and your 60th birthday, it happens again. So you have this moment in your life where you're like, okay, where is my life going? What is the point of why am I here? What is the point of it all? So the Saturn return can be a little bit difficult for people. And a lot of people sometimes go through it not even realizing they're going through it. And that can be a very, very drastic time in your life when you don't realize that you're going through your Saturn return and why things all of a sudden feel rushed. They feel like you're being pushed by the universe to do something now. And now Saturn return is a great time, I think, at least for me, to start a new project if you have thought it out. Okay, if you haven't thought out that project, maybe it's not the best time to rush it. But if you've thought it out, then your Saturn return is really the turning point, okay, of your life. It's the turning point where you say, you know what, how is my life going to change? What am I going to do differently? What am I going to what is my experience going to be now in my life, okay? So when you are coming up on your Saturn return, meaning when Saturn returns to the place where it was when you were born 29 and a half years ago, that is a very, very drastic time to deal with. Now, right now, we're going through a Saturn return as a species, okay? We're in the age of Aquarius. We recently went through a Saturn return earlier this year. So we're on the back end of the Saturn return, depending on depending on which astrologer you're talking to. Some astrologers believe we're still in the Saturn return period. Some astrologers believe we already passed the Saturn return period. But we are currently in a piece of our lives where, as a human race, we are all being pushed to do better. How can you do better? How can you be better? Getting back to what God intended for you to be here for. So that is all about what the Saturn return is really about. A lot of people are very afraid of Saturn return because Saturn is also the planet of karma, meaning that you will reap what you sow. So if you haven't been such a great person this whole lifetime, or then Saturn is going to kind of beat your butt. But if you have been a really good person, then it will push you to become even better than you are. And it will reward you for the good person that you are. So Saturn return is a really great time. And just because maybe your Saturn return is not around right now does not mean it makes it irrelevant, because right now as a whole species, we're going through it. And those of us who are like above their 50s are about to go through it as well individually, because each single person goes through the Saturn return at a different time based on the year that you were born. So it's gonna be a little bit different. So if last year Saturn was in Sagittarius, and this year Saturn was in Capricorn. No, this is an actual movement of the planets. So all the planets move around the sun, okay? So all the planets move around the sun and they transition around the sun. Planets don't just jump from sign to sign, they transition, okay? So think of gears on a wheel. The gears turning, the planets transition, okay, around the sun. We orbit around the sun. We take our orbit takes 365 days. The planet Earth orbits every 365 days around the sun. The planet Saturn takes much longer. It takes 29.5 years to orbit its full orbit. So it will change based on where it was when you were born. It will be different, but for Saturn itself, its orbit is 29.5 years. Okay, so and other planets have different orbits as well. Other planets have the ability to orbit around the sun at different speeds. Okay, Mercury orbits a little bit faster. I can't remember the orbit of Mercury at this moment, but it's pretty fast because it's closer to the sun as well. So the gravitational pull from the sun to the planet decides how quickly the orbit will be. And also, if the orbit is too fast, it could actually, some scientists believe that it could like spin us off into the universe, but I don't know if that's really true. Exactly. So your own individual Saturn return depends on where it is every 29.5 years, okay, once it completes its full orbit. So that may differ. So, 29.5 years ago, Saturn might have been in Sagittarius. In that case, then now it's getting back to Sagittarius in the middle of I want to say June. It will get back to Sagittarius again. So that it's basically about where it was when you were born individually, because it changes for every person depending on the year you were born in. So and what a lot of people don't realize is that the Earth is moving as well. So when we talk about retrogrades, a lot of people don't understand that retrogrades is not that the planet is necessarily traveling backwards through the universe. What it actually is doing, we're going into a Venus retrograde. So what's happening right now is the planet of love, Venus, is slowing down its orbit. It is going from its normal orbit to a slower orbit. And what happens is when it slows down its orbit, it catches up to Earth's orbit. Okay? And when it catches up to Earth's orbit, it appears as if it is going backwards because it stops moving faster than us. So to us, from Earth, it appears that Venus is actually going retrograde. But in reality, what's happening is that Venus is slowing down, and Venus is going, wait a minute, let's rethink our relationships here. Let's rethink how we're gonna deal with people. Let's rethink how we're going to share our love. Let's rethink how we're going to love ourselves. So Venus is going, wait a minute, you need to slow down and love yourself first. So we're going into a Venus retrograde very soon. And Venus is going, I'm going to slow down and I'm going to force you to look at your relationships differently, to look at your love differently, to share love differently, to express love differently. So Venus being the planet of love and relationships and sexuality, okay? Venus is going to test us in the next month, all right? So remember that when we are going, oh, I love you, but I want to strangle you. Venus is testing us. Venus is like, it's going to be testing some relationships. Venus is going to be saying, hey, do you really love this person, or are you in love with the idea of loving this person? So that is important to remember, because we can only be as affected by the planet as ignorant, as we are ignorant to its influence. Okay, so we have to be aware of its influence, and then we'll be able Earth doesn't really affect us astrologically speaking because we are on Earth. However, Earth has its own energy. So what really affects us on Earth is the energy of Gaia. What affects us on Earth is, how is Mother Nature feeling? How is Mother Earth feeling? Because this is our home planet. Now, Earth's rotation might affect other species on other planets, if there are other people, other races on other planets, whether it's known to us or not. So Earth's rotation might affect them, but usually the other planets affect us. So the inner planets, meaning the planets that are inside the astral belt, affect our personality, and then the planets outside of that tend to affect our environment. Okay, I don't really follow a particular astrology. I follow just whatever astrology I'm called to follow. I do study more of Western astrology, because it can change depending on where in the world you are. But I'm just drawn to how the planets work themselves, not necessarily how different people in the world look at them. So, because you have to remember, when you are an astrologer, that you have to remember the astronomy of that planet. Yes, rose quartz can help amplify the energy of Venus. Now, just because Venus is in retrograde doesn't mean that love spells go away. Actually, Venus will being so close to the Earth, because again, what retrograde means is that Venus is slowing down, catching up to Earth's orbit, and so then therefore it looks like it's going backwards. What that's doing is, it's now Venus is closer to us, which means it's going to amplify that energy of love. Okay, it's going to amplify that energy. So you might be a little bit more emotional, more loving, more giddy than you usually are. So rose quartz could help to balance those energies as well, to make sure that you are kind of sharing love in the right way. There's a lot of amazing books on astrology, but I do suggest, I'm going to show you guys a book that I suggest that you read before you read any astrology books, because astrology is the study of human behavior in relation to the movement of the planets. Astronomy is very important because it talks about the movement of the planets and the planets themselves. So I'm going to show you two books. Give me 1 second. I have to go through my bookcase over here. Be right back, guys. I'm trying to find the book I want to show you. I have a lot of books. So I have two books specifically if you want to learn astrology. Now, this is not going to teach you everything about astrology right away, but it's going to teach you a large chunk of it, okay? Before you can learn about astrology, you need to learn about astronomy. And that means you need to learn about the planets themselves. Okay, so here is a good reference. It's called The Concise Encyclopedia of the Universe. And it basically talks about all the planets, the groupings, the galaxies, the fact that we are not the only solar system in the world. We are the solar system, but there are other solar systems out there, meaning that there are other planets revolving around other stars like our own outside of our galaxy. So you need to be able to understand the universe before you can understand astrology. Because astrology is the psychological behavior of humans in relation to the movements of these planets, okay, and the way these planets work and what these planets belong to. Our ancient ancestors had more knowledge of these planets than we do even now. Somehow, which is why many of us believe that our ancestors had massive magical abilities, magical powers, and travel abilities beyond what we have now, and that it was destroyed somehow before the Kemet era, before the ancient Egyptian era, because the Egyptians and the Sumerians had so much knowledge, and the Mayans had so much knowledge of astrology and the workings of the universe. So there was so much knowledge out there that our ancient ancestors had that scientists today are trying to rediscover. So I would highly suggest looking up the Concise Encyclopedia of the Universe. So this talks about the sizes of the planets, the orbits of the planets in their scientific form. And then the Secret Language of Astrology is by Roy Gillett is a good starting point. Yes, spirit does act upon the movements and placements of the planets. But you have to understand too that benevolent spirits are also above the influence of the planets also, meaning that they are no longer influenced by the planet. Only us in our incarnation here as humans are influenced, or only other races in their incarnations as other species of other planets are influenced by the planetary movements. Those of us and that are spirits in their non-incarnated form are no longer affected by the planets, because just like we don't have to be affected, okay? We don't have to be affected by the planets. We ignorantly become affected by them because we give into their energy. If we don't have knowledge of them, we are ignorant and not able to resist the energy field, and then we take on especially when the moon, for example, the moon, right? When the moon is full, I have my godmother works, not my godmother, my mother-in-law works at a hospital. And she tells me that during the full moon is when they get the most problems. They get the most gun violence. They get the most people at the hospital. You are most affected when you are not aware, and the moon energy, the full moon energy, tends to heighten, because remember that our bodies, our machine, our vessel is made of so much water, and the element of water is highly affected by the forces of the moon and the gravitational pull of the moon. So whether you believe in it or not, you are being affected by it. So the things with planets and planetary movements is that it doesn't matter whether you believe in them or not. Unlike magic, where you shouldn't be doing magic if you don't believe in it, the planets don't care about our beliefs. They don't care about how much we feel like we are not being affected by them. They have the ability to program us and program our lives, or at least program our emotions, so that then we make a emotional decision, which then ends up making certain things happen in our lifetime. Okay. Because remember, everything starts in thought and emotion, and then it becomes action, and then it becomes reality. So when we are not aware of how the planets are affecting us, how the moon is affecting us, then we might make an emotional decision, which then has real life consequences here on Earth, whether you believe in astrology or not. Okay. Yeah, so even if you are aware, sometimes we can't help it, and we become very affected by the planets, because sometimes, we're human. We can become, even when we are aware, we can be affected by them. So, when Aries came around, the time of Aries always makes us want to do something. It always makes us want to start something. If we're not able to do something, we're very likely to start arguments. Okay. We're very likely to start, just picking fights, or instigating some arguments and kind of walking away and letting them kind of work themselves out. So we have to be aware of what we're doing, of what our environment is doing. Aries is also a great protector. So sometimes during this time of Aries, people feel very defensive. They feel very, hey, don't be in my space kind of thing. Because Aries is an extremely loving planet. It's an extremely loving sign. And the motivation of Aries is to protect that which it loves. Okay, so remember, sometimes it's like that mother's love that, your mother, a mother that really, really loves you would take a bullet for you, right? So that's the way that Aries behaves. Aries is like, you know what? I love this so much that I'm going to defend it with so much passion, and I don't care what anybody says. Okay. So it can be a little bit drastic. It's not a good time to get drunk, especially if you don't have control over your emotions. So that's all I wanted to say today. I wanted to introduce you guys a little bit to some astrology. I know astrology sometimes can go over people's heads a little bit, because there is so much to learn, and every single planet is a different universe when you're learning astrology. Because you have to really learn to make a different I have a different relationship with every single one of the planets. Like Mercury and I have a different relationship than Venus and Saturn and Uranus and Neptune and Mars. So we all have to build a different relationship when we do want to learn astrology, when we want to connect with the universe. You have to build, it's like building, and these planets, all of these planets have positive and negative spirits that are connected to them as well. So that's another thing to remember. Now, somebody said something about astrology not being approved by God. And it's funny because I recently read a book where this person actually proved that astrology was something that God created, and God ordained that everyone on earth should learn it, that everyone on earth should know it. So it's really important to remember that this is the universe, okay? And the universe kind of doesn't really care about our own personal beliefs. It's going to do its thing no matter what we're thinking about it or whatever. And again, there are positive and negative forces to every single planet, just like there are positive and negative forces here on Earth. So when you are building a relationship with each of these planets, remember that as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things, a lot of things. So a lot of you guys, when you start learning about astrology, you'll notice we used to have another planet, and all of a sudden it got demoted to a moon. Sometimes the people that we draw to us are the people who need healing the most. So especially someone said something about not liking pessimistic people, and yet they attract pessimism. And a lot of the times it's because that which we draw to us are the people who need healing the most, who need a change of perspective the most. And because our perspective has changed, God is like, okay, you're going to be the group leader and you're going to be the lantern. Everybody's going to go to you because you don't like pessimism. So I'm going to send all the pessimistic people to you so you can fix them. Okay, so you can be responsible for those people over there. You can be the group leader. You can be the scout leader. So that's how it happens sometimes. You know, God just goes, you're going to be the scout leader there. And you're going to be the scout leader over there with all the people who just, you know, they got to figure their lives out. So that's it, you know. Everybody has a different purpose, and it's just very interesting. So you guys study up, you know, now we have the time. So if you're stuck at home, pick up an astrology book. I know Amazon is still delivering. You know, pick up an astrology book and learn a little bit. Learn a little bit about it, because there is so much to learn. And I never call myself an expert, no matter how much I learn about astrology, because every single day I learn something new. And even though I know a whole bunch more than other people, than most people do, I'm still a student. And that's the awesome thing about astrology, about divination, about spirit, about crystals, about trees and herbs and plants and magic, is that you are always a student. So stay a student. Okay. Stay a student and allow yourself to continue learning. Okay. So remember, astronomy and astrology are different. They're slightly different. They're both talking about the planets, but they're slightly different. So stay learning and have fun. All right. Many blessings. Bye-bye.